The human envoy was on a mission that had seemed straightforward: help establish peaceful relations with the Oralese, a race that had transcended the limitations of physical reproduction and learned to replicate beings through energy transfers. It sounded ideal. But, as soon as the first meeting began, it was clear that this would be anything but simple. Elora, the stunning leader of the Oralese, stood tall, radiating elegance that was almost overwhelming. Her beauty wasn't just skin-deep, it was a blend of grace and intellect, something that made human appearance feel far more mundane. She was a being of purity, untouched by the complexities of physical intimacy, her species viewing such acts as primitive, even crude. As the human delegation gathered around, Elora, her eyes wide with innocent curiosity, asked, "Wait, people reproduce this way? Can I try it too?" The words hung in the air, and the humans went stiff, caught in a moment of awkward silence. A few exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to such a question, much less from someone as perfect as Elora. Was she being serious? Was there some kind of misunderstanding? A few members of the human delegation, still unprepared for the sheer forwardness of the Oralese leader, began stammering. One human scientist, Dr. Harper, cleared his throat, attempting to regain composure. "Well, Elora, it's not exactly something we can just try. Reproduction, well, it's more complex than that," he said, struggling to sound knowledgeable. Elora tilted her head slightly, her curiosity piqued. "Why is it so complicated? Isn't there a more elegant way to do it?" "Elegant?" Dr. Harper repeated, utterly confused, now trying to navigate this conversation with his heart racing. He looked at his colleagues for help, but they were no better off. "Well, not really elegant, per se, but, it's just the way it works for us." He awkwardly shifted from foot to foot. Elora smiled knowingly. "I'm assuming you don't mean energy transfer like we do? You don't exchange energy to create new beings, do you?" No, Dr. Harper muttered, "nothing like that. Our method is, more physical." Elora's eyes lit up. "So, you don't simply connect on a deeper level of energy?" she asked, sounding genuinely intrigued. "You have to, how do you say, touch each other?" "Why yes," Dr. Harper stammered. "It's, part of the process." Elora's expression remained blank for a moment before she broke into a smile. "Fascinating. So you physically create life?" Her voice had a curious tone, as if trying to understand the basics of something far beneath her level of understanding. "How crude." The humans, unsure how to respond to her bluntness, nervously laughed. "I don't mean to offend," Elora continued, her eyes sparkling, "I'm just fascinated. Can I try it, too?" The human delegation went silent once more. Dr. Harper fumbled with his notes, the rest of the team stiff with discomfort. Did she seriously want to try it? Did she understand what that would imply? He glanced at the others. No one seemed able to answer. Well, Elora, you see, human reproduction involves, well, a lot of awkward steps," another scientist, Dr. Wallace, finally said. He offered a weak smile. "It's not something we could just demonstrate easily." Elora was not deterred. "I don't mind awkwardness. I want to understand it fully. How do you create new life this way? Is there a proper technique?" she asked, her curiosity unabated. She seemed genuinely interested, but also completely unaware of how uncomfortable this line of questioning was making the humans. Dr. Wallace's face flushed. "Well, it's, not really something we teach people, it's, a private thing." Elora raised an eyebrow. "Private?" she asked, clearly baffled. Why would something so fundamental be considered private? There was an uncomfortable laugh from one of the younger members of the delegation, clearly trying to ease the tension. But it only made the situation worse. "Look, Elora, it's something we humans do with, people we're close to. There's, an emotional connection involved," Dr. Wallace said, trying to find words that wouldn't sound totally ridiculous. "It's not just physical. It's more complex, you see." Elora considered this for a moment. So, humans need emotions to reproduce? She asked slowly, as though processing the new information. That's quite inefficient. She frowned slightly. No energy transfer, no perfect harmony, just messy feelings? The human teen exchanged looks of exasperation. How did one explain the intricacies of human love and reproduction to an alien whose race had never experienced anything resembling physical closeness? Well, yes, Dr. Harper said, finally giving in. But it works for us. We, connect through it. I see, Elora said thoughtfully. And when you connect this way, is it messy? Her smile returned, though this time there was a subtle glint in her eyes that made the humans uncomfortable. They could barely keep up with her playful questioning. Yeah, sometimes it can be, Dr. Harper admitted, but that's part of it. Elora seemed to be processing all of this with great intensity. So, you physically connect, and then, create a new being? She asked. Do you all do this? Is it required for your survival? Well, not exactly required, but it's how we reproduce, Dr. Wallace mumbled, unsure of what to say next. We need it for continuation. Fascinating, Elora said again, her tone bordering on awe. It's so human. The air in the room was thick with a kind of awkwardness that was palpable. No one knew how to proceed, as Elora's curiosity was unrelenting, and the human delegation had never expected their encounter with an alien species to involve such an unexpected and bizarre line of questioning. Finally, Elora broke the tension by offering, perhaps we should try this process now. Her expression was utterly serious, yet a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. I am quite curious to see how it all works. There was a stunned silence. Dr. Harper's brain scrambled to catch up with what Elora had just suggested. Wait, what? No, Elora, we can't just do that, he stammered, clearly flustered. Why not? Elora asked, her tone entirely free of sarcasm, but laced with playful innocence. You said it was part of your biological function. So, I should try. I want to experience this reproduction firsthand. The humans were at a loss. How do you explain to an alien being, one of immense beauty and intellect, that this was not some form of energy transfer or something that could be casually tried? Elora's innocent charm, combined with her boldness, was more than they were prepared for. After a long, awkward pause, Dr. Harper finally spoke. Elora, we may need to prepare you first. It's not as easy as just saying let's try. Elora's face lit up with genuine amusement. Oh, I'm sure there are steps, but I'm curious about everything. Could you at least show me how it's done? And so, the human teen was left in a bewildering predicament, teaching an alien leader how humans connect in the most awkward, unexpected way. The situation was surreal, but more than that, it was deeply funny, in its own uncomfortable way. The awkward silence hung heavily in the air. The human delegation stood frozen, unsure of how to proceed after Elora's straightforward proposal. The Oralese leader had no understanding of the complexities, or the personal nature, of human intimacy. To her, the concept seemed entirely mechanical, something that could be replicated or duplicated with precision. The notion that it was a private, emotional experience completely escaped her, and now, she was expecting the humans to guide her through it. Dr. Harper, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him, wiped his sweaty palms on his pants. Look, Elora, we really can't just demonstrate this kind of thing like you'd expect. It's not something that can be replicated without context. You need to understand, there's an emotional side to it, too. Elora's eyes sparkled with curiosity, but she didn't seem to grasp the gravity of his words. Emotion, she echoed. I understand emotional energy. But this, physicality? The act itself? She raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the human's obvious discomfort. I'm quite familiar with emotions. The Oralese transfer energies based on pure connection. If you're telling me it's required for your form of reproduction, then I'll need to understand this emotion fully. She leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but insistent. Can you demonstrate for me? Dr. Wallace, standing off to the side, fidgeted nervously. No, 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 look, Elora, this isn't something we can just show you. Humans don't work like that. You have to form a connection first. It's gradual. Elora nodded slowly, but her face remained blank, like a student listening to a lesson they didn't quite understand. Gradual, she repeated. I see. You must have a series of steps then, like how we carefully channel energy into our growth process. I'll admit, I'm unfamiliar with your gradual method. But it sounds like it's highly intricate. I'm eager to learn. Dr. Harper, now clearly out of his depth, shifted on his feet. Yeah, it's complicated. You can't just learn about it like that. It's a personal thing. A connection between two people, not something you can rush through. Elora considered this, then tilted her head. A personal connection? Does that mean the process is, in fact, about feeling rather than just, she gestured with a hand, doing? Yes. Dr. Wallace nearly shouted in relief. Exactly. There's this emotional bonding that has to happen. Without it, well, it doesn't really work, and that's why it can't be demonstrated. It's intimate. Elora's face remained stoic, but the wheels in her mind were turning. Intimate, she mused. So, if I understand correctly, this means the physical act cannot occur without a special bond between the individuals? The humans exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure how to answer. They weren't prepared for a philosophical inquiry on reproduction. Dr. Harper cleared his throat. Yes. That's about the gist of it. Elora's gaze became fixed, almost searching. I wonder then. If I don't experience this bond, will the act still be possible? She asked, her voice strangely serious. Dr. Wallace stepped forward, flustered. No. No, Elora, you can't. That's not how it works. His hands moved awkwardly as if trying to swap the concept away. You have to have the emotional connection. Otherwise, there's no. Point to it. The connection is the point. Elora looked amused. So, then, you can't simply simulate this bond? Not really, Dr. Harper answered, his tone resigned. It's not something we can just turn on and off like a switch. Elora said again, narrowing her eyes. So, to truly understand this act, I would need to bond first. Her voice carried an undertone of mischief now, as though she were trying to tease the humans. Dr. Harper hesitated before speaking. Well, yes, but I think. I see, Elora interrupted, her tone now laced with a hint of playfulness. It's an emotional barrier, is it? Like a shield, preventing others from participating without consent? The humans were growing uncomfortable, unsure whether Elora was genuinely misunderstanding or was somehow mocking them. It was impossible to tell with someone so detached and advanced, whose comprehension of things like emotion seemed completely different from the human experience. I'm beginning to understand, Elora said, her eyes twinkling with more than just curiosity now. This emotional bond is key to your species' reproduction, then, she said, the words emphasized as though she were deciphering some great mystery. And without it, nothing happens? That's right, Dr. Harper said, his voice now more certain, relieved that Elora might be grasping at least part of the concept. Elora smiled a smile that was almost predatory. So, if I wanted to experience this act, I would need to form a bond with someone, correct? A strange, silent tension settled in the room. Elora's tone wasn't just inquisitive anymore, it was becoming subtly flirtatious. The humans shifted uneasily. Could she possibly be asking for someone to demonstrate this bonding with her? Was that even what she meant? You mean you want to form an emotional bond? Dr. Wallace stammered. You're talking about, human love? Elora nodded, her eyes locked on him now. I would like to understand, yes. How could I bond with another human in the most complete way? Dr. Harper quickly intervened, his face growing red. That's not. We can't just, arrange a bond like that. It doesn't work that way. Love isn't something you can turn on or perform for the sake of reproduction. It's much deeper than that. Ellora's gaze softened. But surely your species is capable of forming emotional connections with anyone? Surely it's not a complicated thing? The question seemed innocent, but its implications were profound. The humans were faced with a dilemma they hadn't expected: how to explain human relationships, something so intricate and personal, to an advanced alien species, without it sounding like a performance or show. Well, it's not quite as universal as you might think, Dr. Wallace finally said, wiping his brow. It's, something that happens. Not something you force or study. Ellora, seemingly satisfied with the answer, looked around at the humans and then back at Dr. Harper. Very well. I believe I have learned a great deal, she said, though there was still a trace of humor in her voice. And perhaps, next time, you could show me how it's done? Her innocent question hung in the air like a taunt. The humans were left flustered, unsure of how to respond. They were at a crossroads, unable to fully explain their own emotions and intimate connections to someone who, despite her immense beauty and intellect, seemed so far removed from the messy reality of human relationships. Ellora had already moved on, her curiosity momentarily sated. But for the humans, the question lingered. The awkwardness wouldn't be so easily shaken off. And yet, in some strange way, Ellora's words had cut through the human discomfort to reveal something deep about their species. The messiness, the mistakes, the misunderstandings, it was all part of what made human intimacy so real. And for the first time, they wondered whether they had learned something from her too. Ellora's interest in human reproduction didn't die down. In fact, it seemed to grow with each passing moment, as though she were determined to understand the strange emotional and physical dance that humans called intimacy. The human delegation, exhausted by the continuous probing questions, was beginning to crack under the pressure. They had expected to explain advanced mathematics, intergalactic politics, even cultural traditions, but nothing had prepared them for this. As the delegation sat around a table in the sterile, white-walled conference room, Ellora leaned forward, her graceful figure exuding confidence. So, you're telling me that human reproduction, this, requires emotional connection? Her voice was calm, almost matter-of-fact. How quaint. Dr. Harper, trying to maintain some composure, nodded. Yes, Ellora. We need a certain level of emotional intimacy before the physical act becomes meaningful. It's about connection, not just doing it. She tilted her head, clearly processing this. Fascinating. You humans, you complicate things so much. Energy transfer is far more efficient. No mess, no. Emotions. Why complicate things with such foolishness? Her words were sharp, yet the way she said them hinted that she wasn't quite mocking them, just genuinely confused. It was a curious combination of condescension and fascination, and it put the humans on edge. Dr. Wallace, his earlier nervousness still palpable, cleared his throat. Look, Ellora, I get it. You're used to your way of doing things, but humans, we need more than just efficiency. Love, if you will. That's what makes us different. Ellora's expression softened, but only slightly. Love? What's that? She asked, genuinely curious. The delegation shared a look, unsure of how to explain something so integral to the human experience. Dr. Harper sighed, knowing there was no easy answer. It's not something we can just quantify, Ellora. It's a feeling, a bond that you can't force. It's complicated. Complicated, Ellora repeated, her tone unimpressed. It sounds like you humans are making things harder than they need to be. Dr. Harper let out a frustrated chuckle. You don't understand, Ellora. It's messy. You can't just turn it on. You can't measure it. You have to feel it. You can't have a real connection without, well, experiencing it. And you believe this feeling makes your reproduction worthwhile? Ellora asked, her brow furrowing slightly. To me, it seems like a waste of time. Dr. Harper rubbed his temples. No, it's not a waste. It's what makes it special. It's something that can't be explained by logic. You just know when it's right. It's human. The room fell silent as Elora processed this. She wasn't convinced, of course. She was Aurelise, a being that had long since transcended the need for such primitive emotions, yet she couldn't help but be intrigued. So, Elora said, her voice a little quieter, almost as if she were speaking to herself, this messy process is what makes you human? Not the end result, the feeling? Dr. Wallace nodded slowly. Exactly. It's the bond that makes it meaningful. That's the difference between us and other species, even your Aurelise. You don't feel the process. You just transfer energy, but that's not the same as creating something, someone, with another person. Elora's eyes flicked from Dr. Wallace to Dr. Harper, as if weighing their words carefully. That's interesting, she said, her voice taking on a softer tone, one that was more contemplative. I'm still not sure I understand, but I'll take your word for it. Dr. Harper shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing that he wasn't quite as prepared for this conversation as he'd thought. It's okay. I don't think anyone truly understands everything about love. But what we do know is that it's not something that can be easily shown to someone else. Then why are you trying to show it to me? Elora asked, the corner of her lips turning up into a sly smile. Why not just let me experience it for myself? The question was so direct that it left the human team once again floundering. Dr. Harper could barely keep himself composed as his mind raced. Was Elora seriously asking if they could, somehow, facilitate a way for her to experience human love firsthand? How was he supposed to even begin explaining the emotional complexity of such an act to someone who had never felt it? I think you might need to experience it the way humans do, Dr. Harper said, his voice unsteady. Through your own relationships, not just one time. Elora leaned back, her face thoughtful. I see. So it's about slowly connecting with another individual. Yes, Dr. Wallace chimed in. Exactly. That's what makes the bond unique. Elora nodded slowly, then shifted her gaze to Dr. Harper, who still looked like he was struggling to contain his thoughts. I think I understand now, Elora said. Your species does not want something instantaneous. You prefer the journey over the destination, the bond over the efficiency. Her smile widened. How quaint. How human. There was a brief pause. Elora's smile was no longer condescending, but filled with genuine curiosity, perhaps even admiration. The humans, still slightly uncomfortable, finally began to see that Elora wasn't mocking them. She wasn't trying to belittle the human way. She was simply fascinated by the messiness of it all, the inefficiency that defined their emotional existence. But, Elora continued, I still don't understand why humans don't simply transfer energies, like we do. Why feelings are so important. Can't they be controlled? That's the point, Dr. Harper said, finally getting the words out. They're not controlled. That's what makes them real. The unpredictability. The vulnerability. Elora leaned forward again, intrigued by the human idea of vulnerability. Vulnerability? I see. And this vulnerability is part of why your reproduction is so meaningful? Dr. Wallace nodded. Yes. Without vulnerability, without the raw emotional connection, it's just mechanical. But when you connect with someone, when you really feel for them, it becomes something more. Something profound. Elora sat back in her chair, lost in thought. She was beginning to understand, in some sense, why humans held on to their messy ways. It was perhaps the one thing that made them unique, even among the stars. But she wasn't ready to give up her own, more efficient way of creating life just yet. No, she was far too practical for that. Still, something in her expression softened as she looked at Dr. Harper and Dr. Wallace. I will admit, this whole messiness intrigues me, she said, the faintest trace of a smile playing at her lips. Maybe there's more to your connections than I first thought. And with that, the humans were left with an unexpected feeling, relief, perhaps, that Elora had at least come to appreciate their perspective, even if she wasn't ready to embrace it herself. But there was still a part of them that wondered, had they been too quick to dismiss their own way of doing things? Could their messiness actually be something worthwhile? As the days passed, the awkwardness between the human delegation and Elora began to settle, but the curiosity of the Oralese leader remained unyielding. Despite their attempts to steer the conversation back to intergalactic relations and more scientific matters, Elora always seemed to circle back to the subject of human reproduction. She was like a puzzle, one that the humans couldn't quite figure out, and it both frustrated and fascinated them. One day, after another drawn-out conversation about human emotional connections, Elora leaned forward, her eyes twinkling with a new idea. "So, let me get this straight," she said, her voice calm yet laced with intrigue. "You humans do not just reproduce with anyone. You need feelings first. You require a bond. But this bond isn't something that can be measured, correct?" Dr. Harper, tired of the topic but aware of Elora's insistence, nodded reluctantly. "Yes, that's right. Without the emotional connection, it's just empty. It doesn't mean anything." Elora looked thoughtful. "But feelings are so unreliable. How do you trust them? How do you know when they're real?" "We Oralese," she paused, the corner of her lips twitching upwards, "we don't have these unreliable emotions. We use energy transfer. It's clean. It's precise. There's no guessing." Dr. Wallace chuckled nervously. "I'm not sure if you understand, Elora, but it's not about being precise. It's about experiencing something unpredictable, something alive. Something you can't just control." Elora's expression softened, her curiosity piqued. "I think I understand the idea, but the unpredictability, that seems wasteful. Your species spends so much time trying to figure out if someone is the right one when you could simply transfer energy. No ambiguity. No mess. Just connection." The humans exchanged glances, their patience beginning to wear thin. They had explained this 1,000 times, but Elora still didn't seem to grasp the emotional weight of it. How could they explain something so fundamental to their existence without sounding like they were talking in circles? "I think you're missing the point," Dr. Harper said, his voice a little sharper than usual. "It's not about efficiency. It's about the messiness. We, humans, we thrive on it. Without the mess, the vulnerability, it's just lifeless. You need that uncertainty." Elora's lips curved into a smile, though it was more like a calculated smile, one that hid a deeper amusement. "Uncertainty, you say? I'm not sure I agree with that. But I'm beginning to understand why you'd prefer it. Perhaps I could try it. Just once. To see what all the fuss is about." The humans froze. Elora's words were casual, but the implication was anything but. Was she asking them to, what? Try to recreate the entire human experience for her? Was she actually serious, or was this another one of her playful, innocently mischievous inquiries? The air in the room shifted from uncomfortable to downright awkward. Dr. Wallace stammered, "Wait, what do you mean? You can't try it. It's not like a demonstration." His face reddened, and he immediately regretted speaking. He didn't even know how to respond to Elora's ever-expanding curiosity, let alone explain the human intricacies of emotional intimacy. Elora was unfazed. "Why not? You've told me time and again that this connection is what matters." "Well, I want to experience it myself. I want to understand it. Fully." The silence that followed was deafening. Elora, in her calm yet probing way, was requesting something that was far outside the bounds of normalcy. The human team, already unsettled by her inquisitiveness, found themselves staring at her, speechless. Was she serious? Were they about to cross a line they hadn't even anticipated? "I understand if you're uncomfortable," Elora added, sensing their hesitation. "But you've told me repeatedly that bonding is the key. I want to understand why it matters so much." Dr. Harper, still shaken, rubbed his eyes. You can't just try to experience this. It's not a thing you can perform. It's about who you are with, how you connect to them. It's not something you can just switch on. Elora tilted her head, her expression genuinely curious. I'm aware. But isn't there a way to demonstrate this emotional bond? Her tone was almost clinical, as though she was genuinely trying to dissect the human experience. I'm sure I could understand better if you showed me. If you could teach me, like you've taught me so many other things. Dr. Wallace, clearly flustered, stammered, It's not something that can just be taught, Elora. It's not a lesson. It's living it. You can't just be shown how it works. It's something that happens when you feel. Elora raised a finger, cutting him off. I think you misunderstand me. I'm not asking to perform the act. I'm asking to understand. You've told me repeatedly about this feeling. Well, I want to experience it. Her voice softened, almost teasingly. Maybe it's time for me to feel. The humans were left to wrestle with her request. Could they, in good conscience, explain something as intimate as human reproduction in a way that wouldn't be deeply uncomfortable? How could they ever convey the complexity of human relationships to someone who had never experienced them, someone whose species was so far removed from the emotional spectrum? Well, Dr. Harper finally spoke, his voice hesitant. You can't experience it the way humans do, Elora. Not in a single moment. It's not something you can force, or even try out like an experiment. Elora stared at him intently. Then you've said everything, haven't you? She asked softly. It is not just an act. It's something you have to live through. Something you must feel. Something I can't simply replicate. She leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression on her face. I see. It's quite complex, I admit. Perhaps that's why you humans find it so important. The human delegation sat back, the tension slowly easing out of the room. Elora had not been dismissive. She had not pushed for anything more, but instead had come to a realization, albeit in her own way. The Oralese leader was still fascinated, still intrigued, but she now understood something more about humanity than she had before. You've helped me understand, Elora said, her voice warm but still edged with curiosity. But I think I'll leave it to you, humans. Your messy way, as you call it, seems quite fundamental. Perhaps even beautiful in its own strange way. For the first time, Elora seemed to genuinely respect the complexity of human emotions. She wasn't ready to abandon her own way of energy transfer, but there was something, some aspect of human nature, that had intrigued her. Perhaps, in her own way, Elora was starting to see the beauty in the unpredictability, the rawness of human intimacy. Something that couldn't be explained. Something that couldn't be perfected. But something that was, in its own imperfect way, worth experiencing. As the meeting concluded, the humans were left with a sense of relief mixed with confusion. Elora, with her endless questions and playful nature, had forced them to reconsider their own assumptions about what made human connections so unique. And for the first time, they realized that maybe, just maybe, they had learned something from the aliens' perspective. Her final words lingered in the air, maybe next time, we'll explore something else together. Something a little less messy. And as Elora left the room, the humans couldn't help but wonder, had they truly taught her anything? Or had she simply taught them to appreciate their own messiness a little more?